Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show. Starting out with an extensive list of warnings, watches, and advisories due to a very, very active weather pattern. What we have for Anchorage is winter weather advisory for Anchorage. That should be ending sometime this evening. A blizzard warning for Thompson Pass may extend into tomorrow. High wind warning for Kodiak, that's through at least 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And a winter weather advisories for Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, Bristol Bay, Bethel, and the Alaska Peninsula. For the Fairbanks warnings, what we have is a wind chill advisory for the entire Arctic coast, and that should be ending sometime this evening. Blizzard warning for the Bering Sea and St. Lawrence Island ending sometime tonight. Winter weather advisory for Seward Peninsula, Lower Koyukuk, Mid-Yukon, Kobuk area, Upper Tanana, and Lower Kuskokwim Delta. And then also for Juneau, we have a blizzard warning to CBJ. That should be ending sometime this evening. Very low visibility on Egan Drive for those folks down there. And winter storm warning for Yakutat and most of the Panhandle. So please stay tuned to your local NWS sources for the latest updates on these. So let's have a look now at our satellite image. Starting a look at the west, what we see here is a developing system out by Shimia, and then also we'll see some bands of snow all along the west coast, and then really quite a band of showers just off the Alaska Peninsula and south of Kodiak Island. Then as we get over into taking a look at the southeast, what we've got is that low pressure system in the Gulf, fully wrapped, occluded front around that system. And what you'll see is that with time there, that the cold front section is moving rapidly onshore and inland. And then we have still a nice wrap around that with snow all the way up into almost to the Fairbanks area and in much across South Central. So for today's weather, that low in the Gulf, 956 millibars today, with the occluded front wrapped around it and moving onshore. We also, so you can see the areas of snow in South Central. Any place you see those pressure lines close together, that indicates a strong wind, and we have areas indicated of a lot of blowing snow in these forecasts. So what you'll see is like some snow developing out ahead of this occluded front, but also in areas where the snowpack is loose, it's going to blow. And the same thing up along the west coast with a 975 millibar low over eastern Norton Sound, and that is also causing a lot of blowing snow all the way up from the Alaska Peninsula all the way up to the Chukchi Sea coast. So blowing snow is an issue, as well as the snowfall that's occurring too. And now let's look at our Gulf system. Tonight, later tonight, it's going to be about 972 millibars off of Icy Bay, fully occluded front wrapped around it. A new frontal system is forming on that east side of that, and that's moving onshore for the Panhandle for more blowing snow and possibly some mixed precipitation in the south. Also look at where those lines of pretty equal pressure are tight again. You can see some blowing snow indicated for the Lake Clark area and also for Kodiak Island, and really it might even be some in the Mat-Su area as well, and then light snow over the northern central areas. And then as you can see, that system now in the Bering Sea, 992 millibars and fully wrapped occluded front, and all cold air really is staying in that system. Now looking at the Bering Sea again, we've got a cold front forming up over the Alaska Peninsula, lots of snow showers associated with that. A new system moving into the far western Bering Sea. We also have some light snow and snow showers indicated over much of the mainland sections to the north. A weak trough up in there. And then as we can look into the Gulf, now that system is filled to 982 millibars, still a lot of onshore flow for southeast Alaska, and that snow still continuing to fall over there. Lots of snow showers out over the Gulf. And then for Friday's weather, that system still fills to 995 millibars. Snow showers all around that, impacting southeast Alaska. Anywhere you got a loose snowflake, we're going to have really good blowing snow anywhere from the Copper River Delta down across the Kenai Peninsula, western Cook Inlet, and all the way down to Kodiak Island. Plenty of blowing snow. Now let's look at that system that we've got out in the Bering Sea. 977 millibars. A slug of warm air, but it's not that warm. So snow out in front of it, affecting the Pribilofs and some of the eastern Aleutians, and then a cold air wrap behind it. So let's look at some of our temperatures that we've got going here. First of all, for the Panhandle, lows in the lower 30s to mid 30s, and then as you get further north in the 20s, like 29 for Yakutat, 23 for Skagway, and then as you get over to south central, single digits, +1 for Golconda, 13 for Anchorage, and 19 for Homer. And then for our high temperatures Thursday afternoon, temperatures up to around 40 in southeast, a little bit above freezing as you get finally by Middleton Island or so, it's going to be about 34 degrees. 18 for Golconda, 22 for Talkeetna, 22 for Anchorage, and in the mid-20s as you go further down the peninsula. And then for low temperatures Friday morning, mid-20s to lower 30s for the Panhandle, and single digits starting to show up there for South Central, including 7 for Anchorage. And then for high temperatures Friday afternoon, temperatures in the mid-30s, almost to 40 for the Panhandle, but still in the teens for a lot of South Central, maybe up into the mid-20s in some windier locations. And then for Thursday morning along the North Slope, what we've got is touching into the -20s across the North Slope, also -20 for the Bettles area, -9 for Fort Yukon, -3 for Fairbanks, and then -11 for Nome out in the cold air. And then Thursday afternoon, still negative teens for all along the North Slope, and as is starting warmer as you get south, +7 for Fairbanks. And then looking at our low temperatures Friday morning, well into the -20s again for the North Slope. Also -20s though as you get south of the Brooks Range, still hanging in there. -16 for Nome, -13 for Fairbanks, so still staying in those minus teens. Pretty cold air there. And then looking for Friday afternoon, high temperatures in the minus teens along the North Slope, staying mostly minus temperatures all along the northern sections. Looking for a +1 at Fairbanks and a -1 for Nome. And then for the southwestern Alaska, single digits, got a lot of those for the interior sites, but as soon as you get out the Alaska Peninsula, definitely much warmer temperatures, 22 for the Pribilofs, but approaching 30 for much of the Alaska Peninsula. Then Thursday afternoon, again, single digits, even -3 for Bethel, and then 11 for the King Salmon area. Then looking out again along the peninsula, approaching 40 degrees, 31 for the Pribilofs. And then for Friday morning, what we've got is temperatures in the minus teens all across the southwestern areas, minus single digits for Bristol Bay, but again in the 20s as you go out the peninsula and up to the lower 30s, 19 for the Pribilofs. And then for our high temperatures Friday afternoon, temperatures in the single digits, approaching into the teens as you get into southwestern Alaska, temperatures well into the 30s out for the Alaska Peninsula and 34 for the Pribilofs. So now for our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook for March 7th to March 11th, pretty good likelihood of above normal temperatures for the west coast and western interior, temperature. And then as you go further to the southeast, a pretty good chance of below normal temperatures on the cold side of the upper ridge that'll be coming. And then for a 60-day precip, a slight chance that it's going to be above normal for the northern sections, and a pretty good chance it's going to be below normal for the southern sections. And then for 8 to 14 days, a slight chance of above normal for the northwestern sections, normal across much of the state, and below normal of what we're seeing for the southeastern Alaska and all the way up to Northway for the upper Tanana as well. And then for our precipitation outlook, normal for much of the state, but a slight chance of below normal from everywhere from Nome on over to Yakutat. And then as you get down to the Panhandle, it looks like a pretty good chance of below normal precipitation. So stay safe out there, really active weather pattern.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, meteorologist Joel Curtis with your aviation weather. Starting out with the flying weather for Thursday morning, extensive IFR over the central Bering Sea and down into the eastern Aleutians. Also, we have a little spotty IFR, the eastern end of Norton Sound, and then it's gone into the interior, plus a little bit in the central interior up toward the Brooks Range. And then also we have some IFR in the upper Tanana Basin as well as down to Yakutat all the way to Ketchikan. Looking for Thursday afternoon, a little bit of IFR in the central interior, almost to the Fairbanks area. Also, we have some IFR along the Alcan, southern end of the Alcan, and the Skagway and Haines area. Some marginal VFR all across the Panhandle. And then looking out into the Bering Sea, extensive area of marginal VFR with IFR in the eastern Aleutians and the southern Alaska Peninsula as well as the Pribilofs. And then for our flying weather on Friday morning, we've got a new area of IFR moving into the central Bering Sea, but mostly marginal VFR in the areas that we need to land at, and also southwestern Alaska. Also, the central and eastern interior has an area of IFR, and then also the northeastern Gulf Coast, including Yakutat, and the northern part of the Panhandle IFR on Friday morning. Then for Friday afternoon, we're looking at some IFR for almost the entire Panhandle, marginal VFR of the northeastern Alaska coast. For the Brooks Range and eastern Kotzebue Sound, we've got some IFR areas drifting into the central interior. And then for the Bering Sea, we have an extensive area of IFR with the new system, also making it to the Pribilofs as well as the western Aleutians. So now for our pass reports, Anaktuvik, that's going to be VFR going to marginal VFR. Same thing for Adigan, VFR going to marginal VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, marginal VFR starting out in the morning, becoming VFR with turbulence. And then Rainy, IFR with turbulence. Windy Pass, IFR. Isabel Pass, marginal VFR and some turbulence. Mentassa Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR. Tanita Pass, marginal VFR becoming VFR, but still with turbulence. And Portage Pass, marginal VFR becoming VFR with turbulence. And Chilkoot and White Pass, both IFR with some turbulence in the morning. Looking at our freezing levels, not much to speak of here. The freezing level up along Baranoff and Prince of Wales Island, and then down by Dutch Harbor. That's our surface level. And only a little bit of warm air aloft all the way down to Vancouver Island and for the central and eastern Aleutians. And then for our icing on Thursday, first of all, we've got an area of isolated moderate all across the Aleutians and including the Pribilofs, and an area of considerable moderate from the central and eastern Aleutians up to the Alaska Peninsula. And then we also have an area 5,000 to flight level 180. This is for the Panhandle, and an area of considerable moderate is generally inland, and it should be diminishing during the day. And then for our jet stream, the whole jet stream really is, except for the western Bering Sea, with a core speed of 160 knots, it's formidable, still drifts down over the central Aleutians, and then for the whole area to the south, well south of the state, as you can see, not a whole lot of wind. And then for 9,000 foot on Thursday, 60 to 65 knots out over the Gulf, up to 70 knots crossing the Aleutians. And then for our 3,000 foot winds, not a lot going on except for the western Aleutians. We've got about 65 knots crossing the Dutch Harbor area, and that drifts out into the Gulf. So our main hazard really for Thursday for general aviation is the turbulence and low-level wind shear. Surface to 6,000 feet for the Panhandle. Also, we have an extensive area of surface to 8,000 feet with low-level wind shear, and also some isolated severe through Kennedy Entrance, and also at the southern end of Kodiak Island. And then we also have some area of low-level wind shear, surface to 6,000 feet for the eastern Aleutians. So fly safe out.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and, of course, with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point, years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range, and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back, and I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling. You know, it's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you're going to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, you're elevated, levitating, you are lifted up, your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything. So you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term. But I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for your marine forecast. Starting out with our sea ice edge, not a whole lot of change from yesterday, and just very slow retreat of the ice when we have southerly winds, and slow advance when we have northerly winds. But what I wanted to point out to you is coming up this weekend, we do have some potential overflow in some of the ice areas, and that would include any of our southern-facing coasts. So we've got a couple of weather systems moving up this weekend. It's pretty important to note WFO Fairbanks will keep you in touch with the latest developments on that potential overflow. So looking at a marine forecast for southeast Alaska, starting out on the outside waters, 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 27 feet, gale force down off of Prince of Wales Island, 35 knots, all westerlies onshore. And then for the inside waters, what we have is around 20 knots, seas up to 12 feet for Clarence Strait, otherwise around 4 feet. And then for Friday, starts to respond to another low in the Gulf, wind ranging on the outside 15 to 30 knots, seas up to 18 feet in the south, again, probably a southwest swell, and some variable wind directions on the inside, 10 ranging up to 25 knots for the Lynn Canal, and seas up to 3 feet. And then for the south central waters, starting out as generally northwesterlies, 25 all the way up to 55 knots out of Kennedy Entrance, 60 knots near Augustine, seas up to 23 feet on the outside, 25 knots Prince William Sound, 15 to gale force 35 knots in Cook Inlet. And then for Friday, responding again to a new low pressure system, about 20 to 25 knots in most areas. However, coming out of Kennedy Entrance, still storm force 50 knots, 18 feet, near Augustine 14 feet, and Cook Inlet 10 to 20 knots. And then for the Kodiak Island and Peninsula waters, on the Bering Sea side, 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 15 feet, and 50 knots off of Kodiak with gusts to 65, seas up to 24 feet, Shelikof Strait 40 knots. And then for Friday's marine forecast, what we have is on the Bering Sea side, 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 13 feet. And then for the Gulf side, we've got up to 50 knot northwesterly, seas 20 feet off of Kodiak Island, otherwise ranging down to gale force 35 knots and seas around ranging anywhere from 8 to 18 feet. And then for the Aleutian chain, what we have is generally westerlies starting out on Thursday. On the Bering Sea side, up to storm force 50 knots, seas 29 feet. On the Pacific side, 40 to 45 knots, seas up to 23 feet. And then we start seeing on the Aleutian chain on Friday, winds coming around, starting to be that south southerly. On the Pacific side, 20 knots and seas up to 11 feet. But on the Bering Sea side, we've got up to gale force 35 knots and seas up to 13 feet. And then for the West Coast, what we've got is 15 to 20 knots over the ice. And then when we get down to the Pribilofs, southwest 30 knots, but near St. Matthew, northeast, and circulating around that low pressure system, moving into the Bering Sea, seas up to 16 feet. And then for Friday, again, variable wind directions all around over the ice, 10 to 25 knots, but up to 40 knots near St. Matthew, easterly and southerlies 30 knots with 12 feet. And then for the Arctic coast on Thursday, we've got 10 to 15 knots over the ice, except to 25 knots near Kotzebue Sound. And then looking for Friday, 10 knots along the north slope and 10 up to 20 knots through the Bering Strait. So looking at our tonight's weather, again, we've got two low pressure systems, 992 in the Bering and 972 in the Gulf. Looking at then a single low, 982 millibars off of Icy Strait. Please watch all this weather. Be safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.